Today, we're going to talk about spiritual awakenings, if you're even having one, and if you're having one, what to do about it. I'm Risa Morimoto, your host, and I'm an integrative nutrition and health coach, and you're watching Modern Aging, where we chat about innovative and holistic ways to elevate our health and well-being as we age. If you're new to the channel, I'd love for you to subscribe. All you got to do is click on that little red button below with that little bell next to it to be sure to be notified whenever we post a new video. And if you're liking these videos, I'd be grateful if you could give it a little thumbs up. That way, it tells YouTube to show it to other like-minded people. So today, my guest is Christina Lopes. She is a spiritual teacher who guides people through their past trauma and pain and helps navigate them through the challenges of a spiritual awakening so that they can find their deeper, true meaning and purpose in life. So if you're looking for some clarity, if you're looking to heal your past trauma and pain, I mean, we all carry around this baggage, right? So if you're looking for that spiritual awakening, you're definitely going to check out my chat with Christina. Christina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello. It's good to be here, Risa. Good to be with you.
No, I am so delighted, and we're connecting. You're in Portugal, I'm in New York, and so this is the amazing thing about technology.
Yeah, love it.
Today we're going to talk about spiritual awakening for women and women holding their power and all this amazing stuff that I think a lot of us women hold a lot of our baggage inside and have a hard time releasing it and have a hard time kind of moving forward. So before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of our conversation, I would love to hear more about you, your backstory, and how you came to kind of be in this field.
Yeah. So I was a physical therapist. I was a clinician for a really long time in the field of physical therapy. I worked in neuropediatric, so I worked with children with disabilities. So I was a clinician, kind of on that science route. And it was in beginning of 2013, end of 2012, beginning of 2013, that really I went through a spiritual awakening after my life falling apart, basically, as I think that's what happens to the majority of us. We kind of, when we wake up to something deeper about our lives. It's usually been happening through a little bit of any kind of drama in your life, and that's pretty much what happened to me. My marriage fell apart, and I just decided I had these spiritual gifts since I was a child. I come from a long line of women that were known for their spiritual gifts, and so I knew that I had these sensitivities since I was a child, but I was very afraid of them, and so I had kind of closed the door on those sensitivities, and I went into the science route. And then when my life fell apart, I started thinking to myself, well, that didn't work out so well. The way that I thought my life was supposed to end up didn't work out so well. So now maybe it's time for me to start doing something else. And so that's when I really just opened the door and I said, okay, I'm willing to rediscover something about myself, maybe a certain destiny that I'm here to fulfill, a certain path that I'm here to fulfill, and I'm ready to open up to what that is. Now that my life's fallen apart, might as well just, jump off the cliff and and just, go all the way in, right? And so that's what ended up happening to me in 2013. I had a really long spiritual awakening, so it lasted, the big changes lasted about 6 years of my life, 4 of which were spent in solitude. So I was pretty
Wow.
much, I was pretty much a hermit for 4 years straight. I was kind of alone in the middle of nowhere, and I
Was
was
that purposeful, or was that just because that was your
yeah,
situation?
I think it was purposeful in the sense that I knew that I had to open up to my spiritual gifts. And for me to do that, I really had to be alone. So I really left everything behind. I was living in the US. I'm living in Portugal now. I grew up in Portugal. My parents are Portuguese. And so I had grown up in Portugal, but then I went to I was born in the US, came to Portugal, grew up in Portugal, and then went back to the US during college. And then when I finished my college degrees, I just, always considered the US my home. And so when I had that spiritual awakening, I said, okay, time for something new. And I literally walked out of my house with a couple of suitcases and I moved to Portugal. And it was when I got to Portugal that I really started to feel a very deep pull towards solitude, being in hermit mode, what they call it in spiritual circles. Being in hermit mode was I was just alone. I spent a lot of time, a lot of hours meditating a day. I was really, really going deep into the issues that I needed to heal, because I knew that I had a ton of trauma from my childhood that I hadn't properly healed, and I knew it on. I think we all kind of know this on a certain level. We know the things that sort of need to be healed or addressed, and sometimes we just brush them aside and carrying on with our lives. And at that point, I said, nope. It's time for me to not just reevaluate my life, but go into all of the closets, get those skeletons out, to clear them out, clean them out, heal, and then so that I can move forward with a lot more power. And so that's sort of why I stayed 4 years in hermit mode, and then I went back into regular life. I went back into regular society after that, and I started to build a YouTube channel. I began to build a business around assisting and coaching other people in healing their pain, coming out of very challenging situations. And that's what I do. That's what I do right now. I do retreats and online courses, and I have a very popular YouTube channel where people can go on there and just watch a bunch of videos on spiritual content, personal development content, just to kind of help you with any challenges that you may have in your life.
That is so, so amazing. And I'm so sorry that you kind of had to go the hard route to kind of find your purpose. But it was kind of your destiny, right? In many ways.
Yeah, I don't regret it at all. I don't look back and say, oh, I wish things had been different. I really look back on my past and on my life as it's unfolded, and it's just been beautiful, even the painful aspects. Because I think once you get to a point of, I think this is really emotional maturity, emotional spiritual maturity, where you get to a point where you look at the things that happen to you and you face the pain and you face the trauma that those events or those things may have caused you, but you no longer live hostage to those things, and you don't allow those things to tell a story about who you are. And so that's a really important aspect of healing, is facing it, healing it, but then not keeping it as a form of identity.
Right.
And so that's kind of, that's the work that I did and, continue to do. I think the healing path is a lifelong path. It's not something that you just get done and then, woo, everything turns into unicorns and fairy dust. That's definitely not it. But now, whenever there's something that needs to be healed, I come to that healing with a lot more lightness, I think, and a lot more maturity, because I've just done it so many times that it's not really scary anymore for me. And I
Yeah.
think that's natural progress of, people that as they're healing, things don't get as scary anymore. So they're just like, oh, look, there's something I have to heal. Okay, let's sit down, let's go through it, let's feel it, process, and then move on.
What is that about us that we attach ourselves, our identity to our trauma, or, you know, the bad things that happen to us, or, I mean, when you start to dig deep, why do we do that as humans?
I think it's a force of habit. So the first issue, why it becomes part of our identity a lot of times, is because, when these traumas are happening to us, there's no way for us to get out of them. So usually our biggest traumas occur when we're dependent children for the majority of people. A lot of people have trauma as adults. That can happen also. But I view trauma as an adult differently from the trauma that you acquired as a child, because if something really bad happens to you when you're an adult, you have a different level of maturity and a different ability and different skills to be able to work through that trauma a little bit more easily than if you have a childhood trauma, because at that point you don't have the skills. When you're a child, you don't have the skills to come out of that trauma and just be like, oh, I'm not, I'm going on my merry way, I'm not dealing with this. You're a child. And so you have very limited tools to be able to face the pain that you're going through and extricate yourself from the pain that's happening. And so a lot of times we sort of build our identity around that trauma. One of the main things that trauma survivors do initially is they actually start to normalize that trauma, because that's really the only way you're going to survive as a child. So an example of this would be if someone is being emotionally abusive. So if someone has an emotionally abusive parent, or a parent that screams a lot, a parent that berates them a lot, and the child just hears this every single day, there's going to come a point where the hard wiring of the child for survival, this is really a question of survival, that child has to reason somewhere in their mind that what they're hearing is normal. Because if they don't rationalize that way, it's very, very damaging for the child, and their system cannot maintain homeostasis. So in order for that child to remain somewhat balanced in a ridiculous situation or in a painful situation, there's a part of them internally that normalizes what they're going through. And so if you normalize something, then it's very easy for you to just incorporate that into your identity, right? Like you can incorporate, oh, it's totally normal for people to scream at me. I'm not a very good person, so it's normal for people to be mad at me. I'm a piece of crap, or I'm a whatever. Their whole identity starts to be built on being berated by that parent, is just an example. And so then this becomes very, very enmeshed in their identity, to a point that when then you grow up, that is so enmeshed in your identity that sometimes it's really hard for us to let go of pieces of our identity, even if those pieces of our identity are the most painful.
Right.
And this isn't just with our identity, this occurs with everything. Why do people stay in toxic relationships longer than they need to? Because it's normal. They have normalized that, and it's something that is known to them. And so sometimes we prefer to stay in painful situations just because we know them, we understand them, we know the situation, versus starting something new and going out on our own and not understanding what the heck is going to go on. So a lot of times people prefer the known versus the unknown, even if the known is painful.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's
100%. I think somehow the comfort of knowing, I don't know how that supersedes any sort of discomfort and pain, but it does all the time.
yeah.
Um, so at what point do you realize, is there something that happens, or what are like kind of the signifiers that says to someone to say, you know what, I think I really need to take a deeper look at this. I think I need to change. I think I do need a spiritual awakening, or are there certain kind of triggers for that sort of thing? Do things really need to get that bad?
They don't need to get that bad, and for a lot of us, people are having spontaneous awakenings right now without anything bad having to happen to them. So, for example, COVID was a great example. So, a lot of people during lockdown, there's been, a lot of people have reached me during the COVID lockdown. Why? Because we were all in lockdowns, and guess what? You're staring at the four walls of your house. You can't escape, you can't go on shopping sprees, you can't do any of the things you used to do before that used to distract you from a higher level of discernment. Your distractions are gone. You can't go to a bar, you can't go party, you can't go travel, you can't do anything. You're literally staring at the four walls of your house. And it's at that moment when people are like, oh, I'm not really happy.
Yeah.
I hate my job. I do not like my partner, and now I'm stuck in fun, inside four walls with my partner, and now it's really in my face that we are not meant to be together. Oh my God. And so then they start to kind of face these things, but this was more spontaneous. This was a little bit better than, for instance, how I woke up, which is, just a very, very painful ending to a relationship that was very sudden. And so it doesn't always have to be through pain, but really the major starting point for a spiritual awakening, and you could be walking down the street. You could literally be walking down the street, but usually the question that comes up is, you'll take a nice deep breath and you'll say, what? There's got to be something more to my life than this. That's one of the most common triggering questions of an awakening. By the time you actually consciously ask this question, your spiritual awakening has already started, because you wouldn't have asked that question otherwise, right? You're in a different level of awareness when it comes to your conscious mind. The question, there's got to be more to my life than this. What is it? What is it? What is it? Because I feel like I'm in robot mode. I'm getting up, going to work, have my family, whatever, come home, and I do the same thing over and over again. And I feel like there's something, I'm missing something. A lot of people tell me. A lot of people are like, I don't know what the heck's going on, but I am missing something. I feel like my life is passing me by, and I just keep doing the same things over and over again, and I feel like I'm missing out on something. These are triggering statements or triggering questions that usually start to get us to go deeper. And the deeper you go, the more you'll open up into that spiritual awakening, the more you'll open up into what your soul has been trying to say to you all along.
That's amazing. And so when you say go deeper, are you saying that you're going to be asking yourselves more questions? Is this something that
Yeah.
you really should seek outside help at this point for? Or is it something that you can do, if you decide to do the inner work?
You can do it on your own to a certain extent. And it also depends on what your path is. So for example, I did a lot of this work on my own, and I'm using air quotes because I was never on my own. Through my spiritual sensitivities, I had very, very clear communication with my guides. And once I opened up, I could hear the communications, I could receive those downloads. And so it was easy for me to kind of go into that hermit mode. It was easier because although I was physically alone, I was receiving intuitive guidance that I was journaling about and I was writing down, and so a lot of revelations came to me. But for other people, they need to reach out to someone else to kind of help, or a healer or a coach. A lot of people actually start their healing work through a psychotherapist. So in the West, the most common way to start going in and starting with that spiritual awakening, with that deeper understanding, is through a psychotherapist, because psychotherapy is societally accepted. So it's less accepted for you to say, oh my God, something's going on with me, let me go find a shaman. That's less common in the West. It's becoming more common, but it's still less common. It's more common for us to say, oh my God, I've got some issues, I need to go see a therapist, or I need to go see a shrink. That's usually what people in the West will start. But no matter where you go about, whether you reach out for help or whether you just sit down and say, hey, I really do have some issues that I have to work through. I have some issues that I have to work through, and we'll usually come to that realization when our life falls apart in some way. So maybe we have repeated relationships as just one toxic relationship after the other. When you have one toxic relationship after the other, that's not normal. There is something going on. And guess who the common denominator in that is? And when the person starts to realize that, wait a minute, I have to stop saying, oh, Dan was an ass and Joe was just shitty and whatever. I've just been really unlucky in love. When you stop doing that and you say, I'm the common denominator in all of the toxic relationships I have had in my life. Okay, whoa. That is the difference here. It's when I pull away from saying the relationship didn't work because Dan was an ass. Oh, horrible, horrible man, narcissist. Oh, such a horrible man. The moment that I stop doing that and I say, what have I contributed to the successive toxic relationships that have entered my life? What is within me that is calling those relationships forth? That's what I want to find out, because I don't want to keep calling those relationships forth. I want to call forth healthy love. And so for me to be able to do that, I have to heal everything within me that keeps magnetizing messed up men or messed up women or whatever. Okay, right. And this is just an example. But I think the main point is you stop pointing out there. So I'm this way because my parents made me this way. Nope. You may have had a very toxic upbringing. Your parents may have there have been a lot of trauma in the household, yes, but now you are an adult. Now you're an adult with choices, with tools, with opportunities. And so the moment that the person changes from that victim mode of pointing to, all right, I am ready. I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to come into a different level of consciousness. I'm ready. Everything changes. Everything changes.
Absolutely. So how does religion play into this? Is it completely separate? Is it kind of an integration? Is it, because you're not talking from a religious point of view.
No.
It's more secular. It's more.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between being spiritual and being religious. And more people, so I reach thousands of people, and so many people have been reaching me more and more. They're pulling away from religion, and but they're continuing to be spiritual, right? But they're just pulling away from religion in the sense that they're tired of their religion saying that, gay people shouldn't be married, or they're tired of saying when their religion says, oh, a woman shouldn't have choice over her body, or they're tired of saying when a religion says, a woman should cover herself. They're very tired of being templated with all of these things that to them no longer resonate as true. And it resonates more as archaic rules put in place, usually by men and by patriarchal societies that have kind of just trickled down to the rest of us. And so the more and more of us that awaken, a lot of religious people have come to my videos, and they'll leave comments and send me emails, and they'll say, I'm trying to come out of the religious templating, but it's so powerful that even watching your videos, and when you talk about chakras or when you talk about something esoteric, there's a part of me that says, oh my God, I shouldn't be watching this because this is of the devil. This is a Christian belief. And so a lot of times the people that are religious actually have a lot of beliefs to work through to be able to free themselves so that they can step into spirituality with a non-religious connotation to it. And so a lot of people are doing that right now. But yeah, spirituality and religion are very different. Spirituality to me just very simply means that we connect to something that's beyond our physical body, and we understand ourselves to be something more than mind and body. There's something more. There's something more to consciousness. We understand that we all come from what some teachers call oneness, what some teachers call God, if you want to borrow that term from religion, although sometimes people don't like to use that because they immediately think that we're talking about religion. No, talking about God or source or creator in the sense that in the same way that you can use the word Big Bang, we all come from the Big Bang. And so if you want to use that term, that's great too. But the point is, we all come from the same place, right? Like we all come from that Big Bang, everything exploded, stardust everywhere, and then suddenly we started to turn into things and planets and galaxies and universes and all of that. And so that's where spirituality comes in for me. It's just the ability to connect with something beyond what your five senses can detect. And we all have that ability, and it's not religious in any way.
Absolutely, 100%. So how do we connect? If we've been so disconnected, right, from life, we're just kind of robots going through our daily routines. What are some of the steps that we can take to try to reconnect with our energy, try to reconnect with our chakras, as you're saying, to try to really tune back in?
Yes, yeah. So one of the reasons I spent 4 years of my life in hermit mode, I was very close to nature. So that's the number one recommendation that I would say. Put your phones down, put your TVs, turn your TVs off, get off the couch, and no more Netflix binging, at least for a while. I sometimes Netflix binge now, like I'll watch a movie or whatever. But the point here is extricate yourself from all of the things that you have been using as escape mechanisms. And we all know this. We all know this. So what are your escape mechanisms? I've asked so many clients. What are your escape mechanisms? Oh, when I start to get nervous or upset, I'll go on a shopping spree with my girlfriends. Or when there's something on my mind and it's bothering me so much, I just need to sit on the couch and watch mindless TV. Who has said this? So many times, right? Like so many of us have said this, right? So start making a list of what those distractions are. TV, scrolling through social media. How many hours a day do normal people spend scrolling through social media? Maybe it's a shopping spree. Maybe it's traveling, because when you go to an exotic location and you take a selfie of yourself and you post it on Instagram, suddenly you feel good about yourself for 5 minutes. And then suddenly the feelings are back, okay? So find what your vices are. I love to use this word. Find what your vices, the things that you use to distract you from uncomfortable feelings, find what they are, write them down if you have to, put them on the refrigerator, and say to yourself, I'm going to cut these things out of my life, maybe just for a week. Maybe start with just a week. I'm going to stop mindlessly scrolling through social media for a week. I'm going to stop binge watching TV for a week. I'm going to stop shopping sprees for a week. And then once you get through your little list of vices and you promise yourself, I will not do these things for 1 week, now it's time to figure out what to do with all the time that you've just freed up. And that's when nature comes in. I'm going to put my shoes on. I'm going to put some nice little hiking shoes on or some sneakers, and I'm going to go outside. If I live close to a forest, I'm going to go to a national park, or I'm going to go hiking somewhere. If I don't live close to a forest, maybe I can find my town's park. The closest place where I can find trees, or maybe I can find a beach, I can find the water, I can find ocean, I can hear the ocean or a lake. I'm going to find some kind of natural element, and I'm going to go spend some time in that natural element, whether it's a beach, whether it's a forest, whether it's a tree. It's just even, I remember, it's coming to mind right now, years ago, I worked with a client who was from Shanghai. He was literally immersed in downtown Shanghai. Now, Shanghai, I think, has like 30 million people. It's an
It's
insane
insane.
Chinese city. And right, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. And so I remember when I started working with him, I would say to him, okay, we need to have these mindfulness breaks. And, he was working in corporate. So he's in the middle of downtown Shanghai, huge, sky rise. And he's just doing, plugging away in his corporate job. And he said to me, I'm really busy. I have an hour of lunch. So what can I do with my hour of lunch? And I was like, well, what do you usually do? And he said, I just eat at my desk. I'm like, we're not doing that anymore. And I said to him, all right, you're going to take your sandwich with you, or you're going to do whatever, take your lunch with you, and you're going to walk out of your building, and you are going to find the closest tree that you possibly can, even if it's a tree on the side of the road. And I remember he walked out of his building and he's like, oh my God, I found a tiny little park close to where I work. And I just went there and I sat on the park bench and I ate my lunch there in the middle of downtown Shanghai, but still, at least he was connecting with trees, and that's how he started his process. And then months later, he was leaving Shanghai, he was going to other places, he was connecting to nature, and the more he became connected, the more he yearned for it, because that's when he understood, oh my gosh, I've been missing so much. So that's what I'll usually recommend to people. Write down your vices, say, I'm not going to do these vices for a week, and then immerse yourself in something nature. Even if it's in your backyard, you got flowers, or you got a bench in your backyard, you got some lawn in your backyard, put a towel down, or just go sit on your lawn, or go sit by a pot of flowers. Whatever it is, go there and just sit, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths and start to listen. Just, what can I hear? So if I'm sitting by a tree, maybe I can hear the ruffling of the leaves. If I'm sitting at the beach, I can hear the waves. I can feel the sand underneath me. I can put my hands in the sand and squeeze the sand and feel it. You see what I'm doing? Immerse your five senses. Initially, immerse your five senses in something nature related. And then as soon as your energy starts to calm down and you become connected, your sixth senses start to open up. Your intuition, your ability to receive messages, your ability to listen to what your soul is saying. All of these things pop up, but a lot of times we just need we need to get out of our heads. We need to get out of that rational left brain consciousness. And sometimes we'll just need simple practices like this of connecting with nature, or connecting with your breath, or
That's
yoga, or
amazing.
exercise.
Yeah. Just being present, right? It's
Just
amazing how difficult it is for so many people to be present, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And
Um,
technology really hasn't helped. I love technology. I use technology to connect with thousands of people. I'm using technology right now to connect with you, and you're using it to connect with me. Technology is beautiful, but there's usually a light and a shadow side to every aspect. And the shadow aspect of technology is that it has been it has the ability to connect us. People can connect from all over the world, but it also has the ability to disconnect us. Seems like a paradox, but it also has the ability to disconnect us, because if I spend 3 hours scrolling through social media sitting on the couch, I'm not going to feel good. I'm not going to, I challenge anyone, especially right now, right? Like, things are crazy. Going on social media right now, or just scrolling through the news, I mean, what an incredible waste of time, because you're just making your energy worse. You're going to feel worse. And so, why do that? So, yeah, it's coming away from technology at certain moments and plugging yourself into nature, plugging yourself into your body. That's another one. If you cannot find a tree anywhere near you, if you don't live by a beach, if you tell me I have absolutely no way of connecting to a natural element at this moment in my life, okay? I've worked with clients on this too, where they literally have no access to trees. They're in downtown, some kind of big city. And I say to them, okay, so you're going to get up from your desk every hour and you're going to go to the bathroom, because we naturally have to go to the bathroom. So when you go to the bathroom, you're going to stop in the bathroom right in front of the mirror, right after you wash your hands, and you're just going to close your eyes and you're going to take a nice deep breath, and you're going to connect to your body, because your body is a part of nature and your body never forgets that. The moment that you connect to your body, you connect to nature. The moment that you connect to nature, you connect to the universe. You connect to this beautiful energy that animates everything.
That's amazing. And I think all this stress and the traumas and the buildup, especially as we get older, right? That also manifests itself into physical health problems, right? So
Yes.
this is not just like emotional, mental health, but it also does affect us physically. So once we start to, um, you know, once we're able to start connecting, I feel like, and just like you say, and be in nature, and it's amazing because that itself becomes addictive also,
Hmm.
right? I mean, which, I take my dogs for a walk, and it was funny because I was listening to Eckhart Tolle. Would listen to his podcast as I was walking, and at one point he's like, if you're listening to this while you're doing something else, it means you're not present because you're listening to me. And I'm like, okay, fine, And so then I stopped listening to podcasts, and now I love it, right? So now when I'm walking my dogs, I'm simply walking my dogs, through the woods or wherever. And it's a profound, amazing experience that I didn't realize that I needed, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing, an amazing gift. And I think that's a little bit along the lines of what you're talking about. Um,
Totally, totally. But that's
so
what you did. You literally put technology down so that you can connect through your five senses with nature, with what was surrounding you. And it doesn't even have to be with nature. Like you can do this at home. You can be listening to Eckhart Tolle while you're washing dishes and you're not present either, right? You're multitasking, doing different things. And so if you put the podcast down and you just, because that's really what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness isn't about you sitting on a meditation cushion and being able to meditate for an hour. Mindfulness is your ability to remain focused and connected regardless of what you're doing, whether you're brushing your teeth or whether you're washing dishes or whether you're meditating. That's really what mindfulness brings you. It brings you into a constant state of meditation no matter what you're doing, but it takes a little bit of practice, right?
yeah, but once you get it, it's amazing. And I think, once the other things start to open up. So, um, I want to be respectful of your time, but there's just so much to talk about. So once you've kind of reached this stage, then what? Right? Once you've reached this where, you love to be in nature, you're able to kind of not be on your phone all the time. You're able to kind of take those chunks of time and you start to really want to do the inner work.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people can do to start that work?
Yeah. So when you start to connect, whether it's to something, to nature, whether it's to your body, so whether it's you just sitting down, turning off the TV and saying, I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes and I'm just going to breathe and I'm going to ask my body how it's feeling. How am I feeling? And I'm just going to sit with that. The moment that you start to do this simple work, right? Like you start to go deeper, you start to open the door. Sometimes what ends up happening is you open Pandora's box, right? So I've had a lot of people say to me, oh my God, I cannot believe. I really wish sometimes that I could have closed the door on my spiritual awakening and I could go back to being unconscious because at least I didn't know all the things that I know now that I'm conscious. And so sometimes temporarily people will get a little bit upset because when you start to connect, that immediately means that you're going to have to connect with all of the things that you have not healed and that you have repressed and that you have bypassed and that you have escaped from, right? Like why do I use my vices, that we were talking about the vices a little while ago? Why do I use my vices? Why do I spend hours staring at the TV? Why do I go on shopping sprees? Why do I, love to go party when I'm not feeling well? Why do I do that? Because what I'm feeling is uncomfortable and I'm trying to escape the feeling of discomfort. Well, the moment that I connect, those feelings of discomfort are going to come up. And that's where it really takes, I would say, two things: one, commitment, and two, courage. Commitment and courage are two words that are coming right now that are really important for this phase. And that is to realize that it's temporary, that these uncomfortable feelings, they were there to begin with, and that if I continue to escape them, they will continue to accumulate until my life falls apart at some point. So if you have that in your awareness, then it makes everything easier, because then you say to yourself, no matter what discomfort I'm feeling right now, I'm going to allow those feelings to come to the surface so that I can address them, I can feel them, I can sit with them, I can understand them, and I can finally heal them so that I don't carry this baggage forward with me anymore. And that takes a little bit of commitment and courage. right? It's much easier for us to stay asleep. It's much easier for us to go through life, using our vices and escaping and not being present. But life is so much more numb when we do that. And it's so much more alive when we actually are able to connect, whether we're connecting to our joys or to our sorrows. We just connect with everything because it's all a part of us. And so when you can get through that and you say, nope, I'm not afraid. I am not afraid. I'm not going to be going on to my vices again. I will not escape. I'm going to sit here. And if I have to feel 1,000 feelings of sorrow, or if I have to feel anger, or if I have to feel rage, or whatever comes up to be felt, I allow it. I allow it to be processed. I allow it to come to my awareness. I allow it to sit in my heart. I allow it. I allow it. I allow it. And you walk through that door where there's kind of a clearing. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. You do your work. You work with the uncomfortable part. You work with the discomfort. You keep going one step at a time, and then the light starts to get closer, and the light starts to get closer, and pretty soon you reach a clearing. And the clearing doesn't mean that you're no longer going to feel uncomfortable emotions and that your life is just going to be, fairy dust and unicorns. No, you're still going to feel uncomfortable emotions at some point in your life, even when you reach that clearing and when you've done the major healing work. But the difference here is that because you've done so much healing work, nothing scares you anymore. And so you have acquired this level of emotional and spiritual maturity that when you reach that clearing, you take a nice deep breath and you said, wow, I've done great work. That was difficult to work through those emotions. That was difficult to heal my childhood trauma. That was difficult work, but now I feel lighter. And now if anything painful, if I encounter anything painful moving forward, I'm going to work through it with a lot more lightness than I ever did before because I'm no longer repressing anything. I'm not bypassing. Now I have the tools to work through any kind of discomfort, and things just get easier from there on in. And you feel a lot more alive. That's what people, thousands in my own life, and so many people that I've worked with, and they just say to me, now I'm alive. I wasn't alive before. I was walking around with kind of a lot of people describe it as this really heavy cape that they had over them, and they were living life. It was almost like they felt like zombies. They felt like they were half alive. They felt like they were numb. They were just going through the motions. And then suddenly, when you go through this work and you open yourself up to do this deeper work, the cape comes off and you're more open to the world and you are automatically more alive. And that's what we're here for. We're here to really live life to its fullness, not to be covered in capes. Like, what's the purpose of doing that, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think there's also a lot of more clarity, right? As well. It just feels like things just feel sharper. Things feel just, I guess easier in a lot of ways, right? Because you really do understand all the levels. And when you can identify what you're doing and if, you know what I mean, if you're escaping something or if you're going to be, if you're going to be confronting something, you kind of have a better sense of what you're doing, which I feel like it's beforehand, it's kind of like you don't even know that you're escaping. You know what I mean? You're just eating that tub of ice cream because it just tastes good at the moment, At
the moment, yeah, you don't even realize why you're doing that. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And this work also, what it does energetically for the people that are more spiritually inclined, what it ends up doing is this work, we've been talking more about emotional work in the sense of connecting to the things that make you feel uncomfortable, but really emotions are connected to energy. So your entire energy system, the human beings have this huge energy system that you can't see, but that exists around your body. The more that you do healing work, the more that you work with uncomfortable emotions, what ends up happening is you transmute that energy. That's why I call myself the heart alchemist. That's what an alchemist is, transmuting something into something else. And when you do healing work, you change these lower vibrations, heavier emotions, heavier pain. You shift that into higher energy. And what's going to end up happening is not that you won't have painful things happen in your life. Everybody does, no matter what level of energy you're at, right? Like, the major avatars, like I give the example of Jesus, right? Like he was a major evolved master and he died nailed to a cross, right? And so just because you're enlightened doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen to you. They may happen to you, but the point here is that when your energy is so ascended, less painful things happen to you than they happened before when you were asleep, because what you were doing is when you were repressing and trying to escape your pain and trying to pretend your trauma wasn't there, it was still part of your energy field. And guess what? We live in a co-creative universe, a universe of resonance. And so even if my conscious mind is pretending that something's not there, it's still there, it's affecting my energy, and it's going to play with the energy of the universe, and it's going to call to me very painful situations, very, very painful situations. And so at the end of the day, I always say to people, do the work. Life is going to get less painful, even though temporarily you have to work through those emotions and you have to work through the difficult stuff that happened to you, and you have to face it. But then at the end of all of that healing, life is going to become a lot lighter for you, and that's an amazing place to get to.
Oh yeah, and what a gift, right? To be able to do that during this lifetime. I think that's really, really key. And before you're like too old, or you know what I mean, before the end of your life, you want to be doing this, you know what I mean, as you're going through it, so that you can enjoy some of it and really make different choices for yourself. So if people want to find out more about you, where do they go? How do they find you?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to find me, a couple of ways. One, you can just go on YouTube and just literally type in Christina Lopes. My YouTube channel will show up right away. That's usually how people first find me, is through my YouTube channel. And then if you want to learn about our retreats or our online courses, you can just go to my website, literally just type in christinalopes.com, and that'll take you to my website, and you can find out about our in-person retreats, our online courses, and our live events that we do sometimes. So these are a couple of ways, usually the best ways to start kind of immersing yourself into our content and kind of what we're doing out there to help people.
That's awesome. Well, I'll put all those links down in the description section or in the show notes so everybody can grab them there. Christina, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
You're welcome. It was so wonderful to chat with you, Risa.